So I want to thank all of you who are gathered here to participate in the 2017 Summit on Global Disability Employment. We have a jam-packed agenda. I'm looking forward to learning from and planning with all of you as we identify ways to work together to innovate, collaborate, and accelerate, all with the goal of getting a lot more people with disabilities into local labor forces across the globe. In my 40 years in the U.S. House and Senate, I was honored to have been given many opportunities to play a leadership role in enacting a legislative agenda that advances the civil and human rights of children and adults with disabilities. As many of you know, I was the chief sponsor of the Americans with Disabilities Act signed into law in 1990. I worked closely with leaders of the disability rights movement in the United States and globally, many of whom are here with us today. And I didn't see him, but someone told me that Tony Coelho was going to be here. Is Tony here yet or not? I wanted to publicly recognize Tony Coelho. He was a House member when we started this endeavor back in the 80s. He actually had introduced the companion bill, the Americans with Disabilities Act, in the House, but due to unfortunate circumstances, he was not in the House when it was finally passed and signed into law. But I wanted to recognize him publicly as one of our early and strong leaders, and is still today very actively involved in the disability rights movement in America. Over time, I've become more focused on one area, the topic of our annual Harkin Summits. And that's the employment of people with disabilities in the competitive labor market. In the United States, we still have 2/3 of working age people with disabilities not working, not actively looking for work. We can do better and we must do better. And I know the situation here is not unlike the situation across the globe. Way too many people with disabilities are not working. They're not expected to work. They're not prepared properly or supported properly to have any success in the labor market. I'm convinced the best way to tackle this thorny problem in the U.S. and around the world is by working together across sectors: government, business, researchers, disability organizations, educators, philanthropy, religious institutions, the media, all with the common goal of generating new approaches, new collaborations, and accelerating the employment of people with disabilities. And we must set goals. We must set goals. I am proposing that we have a goal of doubling the labor force participation rate of people with disabilities in the U.S. and around the globe in the next 10 years. The only way that will happen is if all of the organizations and sectors represented here in this room today commit to finding ways to work together to innovate and collaborate and accelerate progress. Learning and incorporating new approaches and ideas and incorporating this goal into our strategies along the way. That's what this summit and future summits are going to be designed to foster. I want to emphasize that we're not here to simply share best practices. The best practices in disability employment are not achieving the bold progress many of us believe is possible. We need to be open to new and bold ideas that no one has ever tried before. We need to be willing to take risks and perhaps fail, because that's how we learn. And we need to learn to listen to each other across these sectors, with people with disabilities and their organizations always helping to center the strategy on their goal of jobs, careers, and lives filled with meaning and purpose that comes with the dignity and self-esteem of earning a decent living, having a job, and being a valued member of your community. The first Harkin Summit last December attracted 186 participants from 30 countries. I'm proud to say that this year's summit now has more than 270 participants from almost 40 countries. There is no question that the world is starting to pay attention to this global issue. And I am delighted that key global leaders like President Jim Kim from the World Bank and Darren Walker, President of the Ford Foundation, will be joining us tomorrow to dream and plan with us about what the future holds. I am also delighted that we have a much larger contingent of youth and young adults participating in this year's summit. Again, as we move forward with new ideas and bold approaches and new strategies, they will truly help to build and design our future in this area of employment. Many of the participants in the first summit last year learned things that inspired them to push for change when they went home. Whether it was the signing of an executive order on federal employment in Colombia, or pushing the government of the UK to show more leadership on disability employment, designing a new pipeline strategy at Cisco Systems, hosting a mini Harkin Summit in Washington for leaders from Afghanistan, or generating some new ideas to influence Australia's or Canada's strategy for growing disability employment. The first summit was a catalyst for innovation, collaboration, and acceleration in this area. That is exactly what I hope will continue to happen after this year's event, but again, on even a bigger scale. Again, I thank all of you for attending and participating in this exciting progress. So with that, I will end my remarks and say, let's go to work. Thank you.